I know that we do our jinx thing, and we talked about how Bryce Harper's struggling and all of that. But I would like to say for myself that I did come back to the Bryce Harper conversation, and because I went back and listened to it this morning, I did say, looking at the expected numbers, look at the reality of it, he's probably going to bust out. I would not be surprised if he did it quickly. And, man, I was a little bit surprised it was that quick. Like that was crazy what we saw this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, so Saturday night was historic. It's only been done once in the history of baseball that those two things occurred by a pair of teammates in the same game previously, and that was back in 1932. Lou Gehrig and Tony Lazzari for the New York Yankees. By the way, occurred in Philadelphia, so it's only happened twice in history of baseball, both times in this city. And then to have Schwarber hit 3 home runs and Harper hit for the cycle was pretty amazing. And then they followed up last night with each of them hitting another home run, Harper getting 3 hits, a single double and a home run. He was hoping that he got another, but he admitted it after the game. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was thinking about it, hoping we had an opportunity to come back around and get one more at bat in the 8th inning so you could have a shot at a cycle in consecutive games. But he's been swinging the bat, even though he was in that 1 for 22 slump. Like he had a lot of hard outs in there, Bob.
Yeah.
And like a lot of unlucky in those. I don't want to make it like a full season thing that there was a lot of bad luck, but in those 22 at bats, there was some bad luck. And usually, and that's when you say you look at the expected numbers, right? Usually when that happens, that's when you're going to see the breakout follow, which is why it was wise of you to say on the last episode that you could see it's coming. But then he added, and this was interesting, like he brought out the 35-ounce bat in these last 2 games, as opposed to he had been swinging a 32-ounce bat. And we say, well, it's only 3 ounces. It's a big difference in baseball. Like I don't know what you used to.
Yeah, it's a massive difference. It's a completely different feel.
Yeah, it just is. It's a big difference in baseball, especially when guys are throwing 100, right? Like you got to get that through the zone a little bit more. And I think it's helped his timing a little bit. And boy, does he look good.
Yeah, he went from, after we talked on Friday morning, he was at 248 with a 360 on base percentage, 477 slug, 837 OPS. In a 2-game span, he lifted his batting average up to 266, his on base percentage to 372, and his slug to 524. So he sits in an 896 OPS this morning. So I started to think, man, that's quite a jump. Like you don't see at this point in the season in a 2-game stretch, somebody basically jumped their OPS by, 59 points. So I did a little research. There is no Philly ever with 250 at-bats or more in a season that was able to jump their OPS by that amount in a 2-game stretch. Ryan Howard came very close in 2006. He did by 58 points. Harper has him beat by 59. I mean, so what you saw last night is something that, or in what you saw over the weekend, is you just don't see players move statistically like that. And it's why, and I kind of point this out because we had this greater conversation about, is this guy an all-star? And I think that at the end of last week, you probably would have said, like, maybe because the game's in Philly, but the numbers for a first baseman just really aren't quite there. Now you come back and you have the same conversation 2 games later, which seems silly. Like this seems like a conversation that's reserved for mid-April, talking about this type of movement in a player's stat line. But now you have the conversation and you consider what he did. It was, by the way, against the Mets. It was on national TV. Night 1's the cycle. Last night he has another 3 hits. The stat line's completely different. Like he's a slam dunk all-star in the matter of 2 games.
Yeah, no, I was talking about this with a couple guys in the press box last night. Like he went from maybe not in the All-Star game to probably in now over 2 games. Like it literally in 48 hours, he did that. And here was something else that I was thinking, Bob, and this was part of the story that hopefully will be published as soon as this show is over because internet issues. But the story that I wrote about Bryce, All season we've said things like, where would this Phillies team be without Kyle Schwarber? And rightfully so, right? I mean, the guy's on pace for 61 home runs, and we're going to get to Kyle Schwarber here in a couple minutes. And we've also at times said, where would this team be this season without Brandon Marsh or Christopher Sanchez or Zach Wheeler? Again, all deservedly so. But why haven't we, to this point, said, where would this team be without Bryce Harper? And part of me says it's because of the whole spotlight being a little bit harsher on him and expectation level being a little bit higher on him. And we're all sitting here watching this eating our popcorn, seeing as this full season soap opera plays out, elite versus non-elite nonsense, right? But when you really look at his numbers, he's doing things, and he's on pace to do things right now that he hasn't done in a long, long time. He, like you mentioned, he's at 896 OPS. He hasn't been above 900 for a full season since he won the MVP in 2021 with the Phillies. He's on pace for 36 home runs, something he hasn't done since he won the MVP for the Nationals in 2015. So, like, the numbers he's putting up are in line with some of the things he did in his MVP seasons.
Yeah, I mean, look, you said it. Just talk about pacing. He's on pace for 29 doubles, so 30's within reach, 36 home runs, 93 runs batted in at the moment on pace for, so 100 is in play. He's on pace to walk 101 times, score 107 runs. These aren't numbers that are going to necessarily, well, and we'll talk about this in a second. They're not numbers that are going to win you an MVP in 2026, but They are, use whatever word you want, top tier, A+, elite, whatever. I mean, he's in that category at the moment. And, we talked about it. He was probably sitting outside that category late last week. It's crazy what 2 games have done for him. And it's funny, you start thinking about the MVP season in 21, and I'm thinking after this weekend, I'm like, man, Schwarber and Harper are both, within range of at least having the conversation about MVP. But then you go and you look at where Shohei Ohtani slots in, and it's just like the conversation, it's like a non-starter. Like, we can't even have the conversation. Right now, you go on DraftKings and you can take Shohei Ohtani versus the field for MVP. Shohei Ohtani's minus 1,600 to win the MVP against the field at plus 900. Now, that's a great bet if you're banking on an injury.
That's what I was going to say. Why wouldn't you make that bet? And if you're not that you're rooting for an injury, but at the same time, all it takes is an injury to kind of upset that apple cart, and then you got great odds. Like, it's actually a pretty good bet.
And you can't do it. But if you remove him from the equation, I think you start to look at both Schwarber and Harper as guys on that short list with the Matt Olsons of the world. And, there's probably 6 or 7 guys that you would entertain at the moment. And I mean, Harper, if you would say, and like you say, these are the numbers, and this is one thing I think it's worth pointing out. We talk about his current pacing. The Phillies, Don Mattingly said it last week. We talked a little bit about it on Friday. Like, these numbers are probably suppressed a little bit. They're probably deflated a little bit, given that he's run into a great deal of bad luck. So you wonder if that starts to even itself out a little bit going into the second half. Like, is there a possibility that this is like 35 plus doubles? Can he get to 40 home runs? Could he maybe drive in 105 plus? Maybe if Trey Turner starts getting on base, these numbers might be even a little bit better than what he's currently pacing for.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's the thing. And I think that, there's a lot of criticisms of Bryce. And
his defense still stinks this year, though.
Some of them are warranted still, right? Defense has not been great this year. And I think that that's part of why also we haven't, said, where have they been? Where would they be without him? And then there's the criticism. This is one of the things I wanted to get into because it was interesting this weekend. His comments, Don Mattingly's comments, and just opinion, your opinion, my opinion, everybody's opinion on his base running. Right now, we've criticized him many times in the past for his base running, many times, and deservedly so. I'm not sure that I'm of the mindset to criticize him for what he did on Saturday. And let's start with the one that's more important to me. It's not the triple, it's the double, right? Where he really took a chance there because the game's still a game at that point. Yeah. And, he hustles out the double and he gets there. Probably a situation where if he's thrown out, people are complaining about it. Like, what are you doing? Why are you being so ridiculously aggressive unnecessarily? And Bryce says, I don't care what people think about my base running. That's the way I've always done it. That's why I'm always going to do it. I'm always going to be aggressive like that. Okay. That sounds a little selfish coming from him. But then you hear Mattingly say, we want him to be aggressive. We tell them to be aggressive. And it's as long as you do it in a smart manner. And he says, in that case, he thought it was a smart manner. And he described it and said, listen, you have a guy out there who's not a normal right fielder. It was Eric Wagaman was playing right field for the Mets at that time. He said the play is on his backhand, right? And he didn't want to say it, but he doesn't really have a strong arm from out there. So the situation called for an opportunity to be aggressive. And Bryce took advantage of it and took it. And so whereas you might criticize him if he was out, it does make sense as to why he went there. And so this one, I won't criticize Bryce Harper. I don't know about you.
Look, here there's a fine line. You have a hustle double, great. I have no problem with him going for 3 on that cycle either. And we'll talk about that.
I wanted to get into that separately, but
it's a different conversation. But that's fine. I don't mind. Sometimes he'll try to extend. He'll try to take an extra base. He looks silly. As an athlete, if you say this is what I've always done, this is part of my player profile, this is part of my DNA. This mindset has helped me reach this level of success. Big picture, I don't have an issue with that. But the key there, and you said it, is as long as it is smart, as long as it's intelligent. And unfortunately for Bryce, I get what he's saying and the essence of what he's saying, but there have been a number of situations where it's shown up and you say to yourself, I don't even understand the payoff. What was the upside in doing this? And so like earlier this week, you go back to the Marlins series, we saw a situation in which Bryce Harper tried to steal third base and was the final out of an inning at third. Like you can't do that. What's the upside there? Are you trying to get yourself in a position for a pass ball? So I don't understand. I understand it. I know that Bryce Harper doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks. It's quite clear. I'm not surprised to hear that. And he shouldn't. But there's a time and a place. And I don't mind a guy being aggressive, especially when you have a struggling offense and you have a guy trying to make something happen. That stuff I understand. But there are times, and we've seen it show up again and again, where you're like, what was the payoff in this situation? And that I'd like to see him scale back on.
Well, for sure.
It's a simple conversation.
Sure. And I'm with conversation. I think I'm in 100% agreement with you on this. I really am. I'm using tunnel vision here and just looking at the plays from this weekend, right? Yeah. And saying that while on the whole, I wish he was a little bit more intelligent in his base running decisions, I don't have a problem with the ones he had this weekend at all. Yeah. And I know that there's criticism of him out there. It's weird that you're criticizing a guy who just had a cycle and 5 extra base hits in 2 games and like his, was just a beast all weekend. And we're looking for things to nitpick about what he did. Right. And so that doesn't make any sense to me. The other thing was the triple, as you mentioned, you have no problem with him going for it there. I don't either. You're up 10 runs. You have a shot at the cycle. You can take a chance.
He's out by 52 feet if they throw the ball to third in that play.
He would be. And so this is something I also wanted to talk about because I think that there's a belief out there that he got some hometown scoring. He didn't.
He didn't. No, he did not.
No, that is a legit triple. And the reason it is, just to explain it to the listeners, is he never slows down.
Yeah.
He is already around second and heading toward third before Zach Short even throws the ball home. Yeah. So because of that, he is already heading to the base. Therefore, you have to give him that base if he gets it.
Yeah, the runner's intent supersedes where the baseball goes on the relay.
Yeah.
And now, had there been any hesitation, if he pulls up and says, "Wait, let me react," and then goes to third, then yeah, it's a double, and then with the extra base.
Correct. Yes, and if Zach Short throws to third, he's out by a mile. Maybe he'd been out by the most anybody's ever been out by.
I mean, it is comical, and you know Bryce Harper, and you know what he's going to do there, and I get why he did it, and I probably would have done the same thing, especially given the situation. It's not like he's the go-ahead run, come to third base there where he's got to be smarter. He has the luxury of the game flow and what the game was at that point. But, I mean, you knew Bryce Harper, the moment he touched first base, he was just going to go. I mean, he knew it, not coming around second. He knew it coming around first.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that's why it was a triple. The team told him to go for it, right? Yeah. They were actually talking about it in the dugout, like where he would have to hit the ball in order to get the triple. And he didn't quite get it where he wanted. Like he was shooting for Monty's angle out in left center field. It was a little bit left of that. And obviously it was a gapper as opposed to like a ball that you crush off the angle. So he didn't quite hit it the way he wanted to hit it, but you knew he was going for three regardless. Unless it was just a clean signal, he was going for three. And there's no problem with that. That's kind of a cool event. It's kind of a cool thing. His celebration was awesome because, here's a guy, 2-time MVP, been in the league for 15 years, has all these accolades, had never hit for a cycle, hadn't hit for one since junior college. And so that's kind of a cool thing, to see somebody finally get that opportunity to do it.